Okay, today is June 2nd, Thursday, second day of hurricane season, and we're starting off today's discussion with a little different type of image here. What you're looking at is the entire Atlantic, North America here, Africa here, that's obvious, and I wanted to point out a couple things. First, this is showing basically a water vapor type image, except its units is in precipitable water, which is something that we won't get into right now, but it basically is an indication of moisture. The red colors is more moisture, the blue is less moisture or drier. Two things I want to point out. One is to look carefully off of the northeast here. This goes back 3 days, and you'll see a little yellow area come off, move to the southwest, and then over the Gulf. That's that system we were looking at yesterday. Here it comes again. That I mentioned was actually a mesotype cyclone that came off of the coast that was in Chicago 4 days ago with some heavy thunderstorms, moved off the northeast 3 days ago, and held together as it's moved to the south and then southwest, and now it is eventually heading towards Mexico. So it's because of this big ridge that we have over the southeast that's driving these systems in a clockwise fashion. The other area I want to point out was down here in the Caribbean that we've been looking at. There's a lot of moisture, and that's evidenced by some of the other satellite images too. There's the latest one. So we have plenty of moisture to work with. There's not much dry air around it to affect it. So it's a very ripe environment for tropical development. You can even see sort of a large-scale circulation that's centered right down through here. Now there's some smaller scale circulations that we'll look at also, but there is low pressure in that area. And just for completeness, you can see there's quite a bit of dry air throughout the North Atlantic, parts of the Atlantic, but there are some moisture plumes that are coming off of Africa as we speak. So it's an interesting kind of chart. Let's move on to the next image. Okay, this image is in combination infrared and visible satellite image of the same area, and wanted to point out that this system that moved off across Florida yesterday is moving to the southwest. The circulation is down here. There was some convection that flared to its northwest that's now diminishing, but there's a little circulation, and you can see that's making a beeline to the west-southwest. It will probably come ashore south of the border in northeast Mexico. We don't think it's going to develop into anything, but there are some thunderstorms associated with it, so it's interesting to watch. The other area of more importance is this. Here's the big area of disturbed weather in the Caribbean. Now it's easy to get lost and see that the activity is very heavy south of Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, but where we're really looking for something to possibly form is further to the west. Right here off of Nicaragua and Honduras, there's a small circulation. There are some thunderstorms associated with it to the northeast, but right now most of the circulation is exposed. As we've mentioned over the last few days, if something does develop here, it's going to take a while for it to form. There are some relatively strong winds over the northwest Caribbean, which is certainly inhibiting any kind of development in that area. Those are forecast to subside a bit. If something did manage to form further to the west, it does have a chance of moving to the northwest if the steering patterns change. This area to the northeast will probably diminish some and move off more to the northeast. Let's look at a few forecast models. This is a surface model, the GFS. We'll put it into motion and stop it, but look at the low pressure down here in the Caribbean, and it basically has it sit there. This is a forecast for Saturday. So we move through the weekend, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it just keeps it there. So the GFS is not seeing any type of steering that's going to change this area or move this area in any particular direction. Once we get out to 180 hours, we're so far out that the steering currents aren't, I don't want to say they're not important, but they're less reliable. Looking at the European, they do something similar. If you look at 72 hours, it just shows general low pressure. It does show this really large high here, and we're looking at the 500 millibar. Let's go down to the surface, and you can see the low pressure in the western Yeah, sort of Western Gulf, Western Caribbean. But same thing, it doesn't move it. Day 5, same area. Day 8, same area. So all of the models are pretty much stuck on the same pattern. Steering currents are just very weak. If we manage to get some type of high pressure to form off of the southeast coast, that could pull it up some. Otherwise, we're going to just have to wait and see, and it's going to be a very slow type system. This is the animation that we've shown you the last few days. Comes out of, I think, Fox 13 out of Tampa, which is kind of nice presentation, but it's the European, and it's showing that system again forming and sitting in the same area. I wish we had something more definitive at this point. At the higher levels, 200 millibars, we've actually moved out. Let me double check something here. Okay, this is 500 millibars. You can see this ridge to the over the southern states, and if we put this into motion, that grows, but this system down here is really between this sort of ridge and this ridge up here, and it's in an area, a coal area, where there's very little activity. Some models think this trough will build further south and pick it up. We're not so sure about that. So as the steering pattern goes out to 129 hours, here we've got that high pressure. This is not the pattern you'd want to see if you wanted to pull to the northwest. You'd want high pressure over this region. So unfortunately, this just is supporting the whole idea that this system will move very slowly. When we finally get out to the end of the period, and we're looking at 15 days now, things are quite different. Steering pattern is very strong now from the east-southeast. If there was something to form here, it would definitely move to the west. But that's 15 days out, and that's not real reliable. The higher levels, we do have some stronger winds in the Northwest Caribbean. We've mentioned this a few days ago, that we didn't think something would make it to the Northwest Caribbean unless we could get those winds to calm down and become anticyclonic. That does occur by the weekend. There's a low pressure moving to the west here, and there's a little jet. But if you notice over the Northwest Caribbean, winds are much lighter, and you can sort of see some sort of anticyclone over that area. Finally, the UK Met has the same story in the Northwest Caribbean it's been showing. The Canadian, let me put this into motion. The Canadian is showing, as it always does, a strong tropical cyclone over the Northwest Caribbean, shifting it a little bit towards the northeast near the end. Obviously, folks in Florida would be concerned about this if this verified. This goes out 5 days, I believe. 144 hours, so that's 6 days out. Finally, we want to show you this image. It was updated yesterday. This shows the sea surface temperatures in a little different way. The red colors indicate temperatures above 86 degrees, which are favorable for hurricane development. White is obviously in between, still could support a tropical cyclone. And blue is where there's cool waters below, it looks like 26 degrees centigrade. And this is where it would not support tropical development. So right now the Gulf Stream shows up as an area that would support it, but not necessarily favor development. The most favorable areas are a warm pocket out here by the Lesser Antilles, but more importantly for us, what we're looking at is the Northwest Caribbean and this warm pocket, the loop current that comes into the Gulf of Mexico. Interesting, there's a little cool pocket north of Yucatan. That's not real important, but there's a little bit of upwelling of water there, which is causing cooler temperatures, sea surface temperatures. And of course, in the southwest Gulf of Mexico, it's warm also. So we certainly can develop a storm in these areas. We'll be watching what develops here over the next, looks to be week to 10 days in the Northwest Caribbean. That other little system in the Gulf of Mexico will be gone by tomorrow. So that's it for today, a little bit longer today as we're looking at a couple systems. Hope you're enjoying these videos, and please provide any feedback to us by just sending us an email. You could send it to wx@pcwp.com. Thanks.